Why, hello! We are back for some more JoJo. It's Chapter 9, Stone Mask Part 2. We leave off where they were in the alley, and looks like Jonathan, there's this cool panel with his face shadowed in. Looks really sick. He's still got the knife in his hand, so he's dropping that, which is kind of a cool sequence. And I guess it shows us the whole deal with his hand, because right at the end of the last chapter, he punched that dude, even though that hand was grabbing the knife. So I guess we see that he was still grabbing the knife out of that. So what happened? Did he just yank it out of his hand, the whole knife from the blade, or was the guy just so intimidated that he loosened his grip? I don't know. That's weird. We get a cool page here. It's a body shot of Jonathan. He's got blood dripping from his left hand. We can see the knife on the ground. It looks really sick. And yeah, we got Speedwagon running. And before we continue, I want to comment on the inconsistency of Speedwagon's scar. And that seems to be a running theme of Araki's, to have inconsistent scars, because Daria's was inconsistent. But yeah, I'm showing you panels of him from throughout the chapter, and pretty much everyone has a slightly different design for the scar. I just wanted to point that out, because it's not really unexpected from early Araki, but it's something to comment on, I guess. So Speedwagon, he's oh really? So you really are prepared to lose 4 fingers? And he's like, oh wait, well no, I'm only here to look for where they sell Eastern poison, as if Jonathan doesn't really want to fight him. Which, yeah, that's not really in his nature to fight if he doesn't need to. Plus, he needs information, so of course he's going to try to ask about the medicine and where it could come from. But Speedwagon, he doesn't really listen to him. He activates his spinning hat thing with the razor blades. Looks like he just taps it, and it ruins the bill of his hat, which is kind of just unfortunate. What does he do? Does he just re-stitch the bill onto his hat every time he wants to use it? That'd be pretty uneconomic. And he's like, don't bluff me, rich boy. We see this cool little sequence here where he's spinning the hat off of his head. It looks kind of cool. The first panel, you can see the spinning motion. It's just his eyes. He looks kind of worried for some reason. That's kind of the look he has. You see this one, the third panel in that, has his mouth open, all weird, and he's kind of looking up at it like he's worried. I'm not sure why he's doing that. You get this little swoosh separating the last panel from the rest of them. Looks kind of cool. In that big panel, we got him spinning the hat across his arms. He's flicking it, I think. Oh, the anime shows what he's doing. It looks like he's flicking it across to the other hand so it can spin around again. Or, no, I'm looking at the next page. He's just flicking it back onto his head, showing off. And Jonathan's kind of reluctantly defending himself against this guy. He's just got his head covered. And Speedwagon's like, oh man, what a greenhorn you are. You're only protecting your head. The rest of your body's wide open. And then Jonathan kicks the knife that's in the snow, and he kicks it at Speedwagon. He wasn't expecting that. He gets thrown off a bit, but he still throws the hat, and the hat still hits Jonathan square in his left forearm. And Speedwagon's like, ooh, yeah, that's the sound of blade hitting bone. Not sure if that's just a bluff, or he actually does hit the bone with that attack. He's like, oh, well, your kick messed me up, but I still got you. And Jonathan, being Jonathan, he doesn't flinch from this. He just runs straight up to Speedwagon. And this panel's really funny. It's like Speedwagon's just looking up at his foot. He's like, yes, that is indeed a foot. And it's just really funny. And so he kicks him. Speedwagon's like, oh man, he wasn't kidding. He really is serious. He's willing to lose both legs, let alone his fingers. Wow, shouldn't have picked a fight with him. Then Jonathan notices there's a bunch of locals with like scythes and torches and knives and such. They all look kind of interesting. There's this one guy on the far right who has a really cool looking face. These look like interesting people. We see another panel of them close up, and yeah, they look like they've seen some better days. This one guy in the middle left just straight up looks like a zombie. And, they look pretty excited to fight Jonathan. But Speedwagon, he's still conscious. He's like, hey, stop, guys. I, Speedwagon, will never forgive you if you lay a hand on that gentleman. And Jonathan's surprised, like, what? And Speedwagon says, why didn't you kick me with your full force? Like you could have easily done my face in. And Jonathan's like, oh, well, it's because of my father. And when it came time to kick you, I thought that you might have a father as well, a family, people who care about you. So I held back. And Speedwagon's kind of just dumbfounded at the moment. But then he sees that his two friends share a similar fate. They were hurt a little, but like they're still fine. They just got like bloody noses. And he's like, oh wow, this guy really is a gentleman. He's noble inside and out. So he's like, what's your name? Jonathan Joestar. Oh, you said you were looking for an Eastern poison dealer? Careful, he's a crafty one. And, Jonathan finally gets a lead on where the poison might have come from. That's an exciting moment. But, that's the end of the Jonathan stuff for this little arc. Which, I wasn't expecting it to end this shortly. I guess it covered all the same ground as it usually does. But it feels like that's just a bit longer than, like, a chapter and a half. But anyways, we cut back to Dio. He's, walking around in the port town that's outside the Joestar estate. He's walking around, he's drinking. He's got a Kronenberg. I have it upside down for your viewing pleasure. Looks like it says Dead Zone at the bottom of the label. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know. I'm not really a drinker. I don't know what that could be about. But yeah, he's dressed in the drip. It's probably one of his more recognizable outfits because it's what he's wearing at the start of Youth with Dio. But he's thinking to himself, shit, something's wrong with me. My emotions are all out of control. It's all because of JoJo. And he's like he's anxious because like there's really no way for him to verify if Jonathan's dead or if he's found the poison or not. So he's drinking. And he's thinking to himself, look at me, drinking just like my idiot, worthless father, god damn it. And then he runs into a couple of guys, and they're like, hey, what you doing? You bumped into my buddy. Where you wandering to, huh? You lost your mommy to hold your hand? And, that really pisses off Dio, so he takes the bottle, and he just fucking swings it on that guy's face. He's got, like, teeth missing. He's bleeding from his mouth. Kind of a below the belt blow from that other guy, but, like, Dio definitely overreacted to that. The other guy is like, hey, you bastard, what you do to my friend? And he looks, he looks kind of rough. Looks like he's got a cigar or a cigarette in his mouth. And he pulls out his knife. He's like, you're dead, punk. He just looks really cartoony when he has the knife out. It's kind of funny. And Dio's calling them cockroaches with no personal hygiene. And he's like, oh, well, I guess this is a good time to test out the mask before I use it on JoJo. And so what he does, he puts the mask on the guy about to stab him. There's this panel right before that where he's, like, moving out of the way. it's like conveying that he's moving. It kind of looks weird little effect. It's like 3DOs. But anyways, he puts the mask on the guy who's about to stab him. Then he takes the knife in that guy's hand. He like pushes him back to his friend and like stabs the other dude in the neck, killing him. It's really gory and just over the top. Like, god damn, he's got a bloodlust. So he does that. The blood activates the stone mask. And there's this giant glow. He's like, oh wow, what's this light? And that's the chapter. So yeah, something I'm going to talk about, but before that, we got this cool image of Jonathan and Dio, and we got like the Joestar estate in front of him. And that's one thing I got to give early Araki credit for, is like his consistency in drawing the Joestar estate. Because like, it's pretty much always drawn like that. Like, we don't always see the two buildings to the side, but like the main building pretty much always looks like that. I guess he had a really good idea of what he wanted that to look like. Maybe he had like a real life reference, and that's why it's so dang accurate. But yeah, it's like Jonathan's wearing a tuxedo. He's looking pretty good. Dio's got a cool looking scarf with like black and white pluses on it. It looks like they're kids' selves. I mean, I guess it could be adults, but they look like they're kids in that one. But yeah, nice little chapter. We got a lead on the poison. That's good. We see what Dio's up to. We see he's gonna actually use the stone mask. We see something's gonna happen with that. But yeah, so the thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that this is the first chapter of Volume 2. Now, the thing is, I want to take you back to like 1988. Say you're living in Japan. There's only two ways you can really consume JoJo media at the time. You can either read new chapters in Weekly Shonen Jump, or you can find a volume or two at your local bookstore. So, let's say hypothetically, you're looking in the bookstore, you're looking for something new, and you see JoJo Volume 2. You're like, okay, that looks kind of cool. Kind of thumb through the pages, maybe look at the back of the cover, and try to get a feel for what it's all about. And you're like, oh yeah, this seems interesting. But the thing is, Volume 1 isn't there. So you're not going to be able to start from the beginning. You'd have to start from here. And I'm bringing this up because, like, nowadays with the internet, that's largely a non-issue for most people. If you want to get into a new series, chances are really, really high that you'll have no problem starting from the beginning. But let's just go back. Go back and consider for a moment. Now, a lot of manga volumes will have like short infographic sections at the very beginning that like offer some exposition on who the characters are and what's going on in the story. I don't recall that JoJo, specifically like the first few parts, ever did this. I remember reading some scans of like the full volumes, and like it would have some extraneous pages like the table of contents and stuff, but I never really saw anything that was like, hey, these are the characters, this is what's going on. But let's just consider reading this chapter from the perspective of someone who has never read JoJo before. This is the first thing they're seeing of the whole series. And this is something I'm probably going to do with every first chapter of every volume, at least for like the time being. I know in JoJo they do have that sort of infographic section that gives you some exposition, so I probably won't do it for JoJo if we ever get that far. But yeah, let's just consider this chapter from the perspective of someone who's never read it. So we see this guy in the streets. Looks like there's been a bit of a scuffle. He's got a knife in his hand. Ooh, that looks dangerous. This guy kind of looks menacing, I guess. In this first shot with the shadowing, we see a better view of him. It's like, okay, he's kind of a strong-looking dude. Then this other guy shows up and he's like, oh, you said you'd be okay with losing 4 fingers? You mean that? And the first dude says, oh no, not so fast. I'm just looking for where they sell Eastern poison. Now, pause. What information have we gotten so far? So, we got Speedwagon saying, oh, you said you'd be okay with losing 4 fingers. That's referring to something that Jonathan said before. And it shows his resilience. So you see, okay, maybe this guy's pretty tough. He said he's okay losing his fingers. And Jonathan says he's looking for where they sell Eastern poison. So, we know a little bit about Jonathan as a person, and we know what his immediate goal is right now. And we see Speedwagon, he's freeing his hat blades, he's spinning them around, looks flashy. And then after that, Jonathan reaffirms himself that no matter the cost, he will find that poison dealer and the antidote. Because he mentioned the antidote, we now know that he isn't trying to poison anyone. He's probably trying to save someone from being poisoned. That's pretty vital information. We see him blocking only his head. Speedwagon mentions that's a rookie move. That also shows us that maybe he's not the most experienced fighter, which is true. But we see he kicks the knife, so maybe he has at least some battle IQ after all. But then we see he just strong arms that hat blade, just goes ahead anyways. And it shows us the whole, how he would get hit by Dio, but he wouldn't fall back from it. So that shows us more about his character, his personality, his resilience. And then, Speedwagon's like, oh man, he's serious. He really won't back down. He really will lose his fingers if he has to. And then the other guy shows up. Then Speedwagon does the thing where he's asking about why he didn't hit him so hard. Then he mentions his buddies also didn't get hit so hard. That shows us that, maybe this guy is actually not a bad guy. That's cool. And, Speedwagon's going to lead him to the poison dealer. So, pause again. We know a pretty good amount of Jonathan Joestar just from this little bit. We know that he's strong. He's resilient, both physically and mentally. He's on a mission. He's trying to save someone who's being poisoned, most likely. And we know that he is a kind, empathetic person who doesn't want to hurt anyone any more than he has to. Which is, a good look into his character and his goals right there. We go to Dio. We don't know anything about this guy. You see he's drinking, he's walking in the middle of the night. I guess it could show that he might be of moral ambiguity. I'm not so sure about that one. But what he thinks really seals the deal, because he says he's lost control of his emotions, blames it on JoJo, which, if you read the title on the cover, you know that Jonathan Joestar guy is probably JoJo. And he says his life is a wreck because of him. And he's asking if he died on Ogre Street, and that he has to know. And he asks if he could have found evidence of the medicine. Which, that tells us a lot about Dio. Tells us he wants this guy, who we've seen to be a pretty good guy, he wants him dead. And he's curious on if he found the evidence of the poison. I guess maybe someone could think that Dio's the one being poisoned. I guess that's a possibility. But I feel like he wouldn't want JoJo to die if he was the one who wanted to be poisoned. So that's another thing that kind of helps narrow down who exactly is being poisoned here. And the next panel shows a lot about Dio and his background. He's like, booze, I can't live without it. I hate myself for doing the same thing as my worthless father. Damn it. That tells us a lot. That tells us how he views his father. That tells us his father was a drunk. And that also may imply that his father was abusive in some manner. Which, that's a pretty good bit of information right there. See the guys walk in? The guy makes a comment about Dio's mom. He gets really pissed about that. That could allude to the fact that his mom's gone. Maybe you wouldn't be able to go that far just from that tidbit, but you could definitely tell that he's got some sort of mommy issue going on. And not only that, but the fact that Dio is really violent, as we see later, and he's bringing out the stone mask and talking about how he's going to test it out before he uses it on JoJo. So, going off the fact that he's curious if JoJo is dead, we see he has a taste for violence, this could show us that he wants to kill JoJo. And where we continue, this is panel I skipped where he's talking about, you vagrant cockroaches with no sense of personal hygiene think you can talk to me, Dio, like that? You said you'd kill me, right? Interesting. That shows us kind of a bit of his personality, like how he can be egotistical, how he looks down on others, and is very opposite from Jonathan, who wants to be kind to people and will only hurt others if he can't help it. So that's important. And we see he dodges the knife, shows us he might have some fighting capability. And he, not only that, but he puts the mask on the guy, he grabs the guy's knife in his arm, and uses it to stab the other guy. That shows us he's probably pretty adept at fighting. And the last thing we see is just how gory he's being, killing that guy. We see the stone mask lighting, so pause again. We're at the end of the chapter anyway, but pause again. We know that Dio is a bad guy who probably wants JoJo dead and is probably related to this poisoning somehow. We know he hates his dad. He has something going on with his mom. His dad was drunk and possibly abusive. And we know there's something going on with this stone mask, and it's somehow got some sort of supernatural capability to it. And, yeah, I guess that's kind of all the information we know. And it gives a very rough idea of what this story is about. Like, we don't know anything about George, for example, but it gives you enough to go off of. And, like, of course, later in this volume, we will be seeing George again. We will know exactly what the deal was with the poisoning. We'll also see, like, Youth with Dio. I think this whole arc is in this volume. So we'll see all of that. We'll also see how Jonathan and Dio are related and stuff. So, yeah, I say this chapter is pretty good at serving as an introduction for anyone who might be starting off there, which is, yes, just good design. I doubt that chapter was written with that intent, but, it just shows how committed to this characterization, how committed to these themes that Araki is being, which is pretty cool. Because, like, I feel like if you can start a series off at a random point, and you're able to get the general gist of what's going on from there, minus maybe some minute details, then that definitely shows that it's an easy series to follow at the very least. But it could also show that it's a very consistent story, that it's a story with strong characterization or strong theming, stuff like that. That's just kind of cool. Hey, so it's me from later, and I just had a really amazing thought about this chapter specifically, and this is a really good chapter that, like, illustrates the differences between Jonathan and Dio, because, like, they're both out at night in the alleyway, and there's, like, a run-in with a couple of vagrants, right? And we see not only what those two are doing. We see Jonathan's on a mission. Dio's kind of just, like, resorting to bad coping mechanisms, and we also see how these two deal with those vagrants. We see that Jonathan defends himself, yes, but he doesn't go too hard. He spares them from, like, he prevents himself from going too far, because he knows that these are people, right? They have friends and family. But Dio, he goes all the way with it. He fucking kills one of them, and is presumably trying to kill the other. So we get a good taste of their personalities, their goals, how they view the world, even, and it's just this was a really good chapter. Like damn. But anyways, that's all. I'll be seeing you in the next one. We're gonna see what that stone mask does finally. It's gonna be really cool.